Hey, everybody, me again, asking you to subscribe. What is that like? I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. So I'm doing that because your subscription to the Raging Moderates YouTube channel is like you loving me and Scott. And we feel that deeply. And we're super excited about everything that's going on here. And yeah, subscribe. And here's my conversation with Dan Osborn. Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Jessica Tarlov, and today I'm joined by Dan Osborn. He's a veteran, labor leader, and independent candidate who nearly unseated Senator Deb Fischer in 2024, and now he's back on the campaign trail, this time challenging Republican Senator Pete Ricketts. Dan, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on.
No,
Appreciate
it's a
it.
pleasure. I followed your 2024 race very closely. It was inspiring and exciting for those of us in the Beltway, the proverbial Beltway. I'm in New York. But it was exciting to see a real authentic guy out there doing the thing. And I want to talk about you doing the thing, but I want to talk about Jimmy Kimmel first. Tuesday night, he broke his silence about the controversy that temporarily suspended his late night show. Trump is now threatening to sue ABC for putting him back on the air. And in return, Kimmel came out swinging, calling Trump a bully. Let's watch a clip from his opening monologue.
The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was somehow able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS. Then he turned his sights on me, and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't make millions of dollars. And I hope that if that happens, or if there's even any hint of that happening, you will be 10 times as loud as you were this week. We have to speak out against this because he's not stopping.
What did you make of his monologue?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you played it for me because, like a lot of people, probably I was in bed by that time because I got to get up for work every morning. I get little snippets across my social media feeds that I'll watch, and if I don't like something, I don't watch it. Right? That's kind of like the whole point. But no, I think he's absolutely right. You start going after, especially comedians and talk show hosts. If you don't like something, you just simply don't watch it. I mean, the Constitution of the United States, number one is freedom of speech. And that is something that has always been sacred in this country. And we should protect at all costs because if we lose that, then who are we? So I don't watch them. But, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter whether it's left or right or top or bottom. You don't mess with freedom of speech. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, he echoed those sentiments and pointed out a number of Republicans who had come to his defense, including people like Ted Cruz, who said as well, like, I hate Jimmy Kimmel and I want him to be fired, but not like this, just for being unfunny.
Yeah, I mean, if you're unfunny, then your ratings suck and then you get canceled. I mean, that's happened I don't know how many times throughout history, but the executive branch of the government should not be dictating who's on TV and what voices we hear.
But they are trying to. And how has that message of fidelity to the Constitution and kind of these core American principles, been infused in your campaign? Are you hearing that Nebraskans are concerned about overreach from the government?
Yeah, of course. But also part of my job going around and talking to Nebraskans, and I did 200 publicly advertised events in the last cycle, and I'll do 250. I'm going to get out and talk to people where they're at, where they work, where they live, where they raise their families, and want to hear from them. But ultimately, my job is to talk about like what's behind the scenes, right? What's driving this that people aren't talking about? Everybody wants to talk about, Jimmy Kimmel and the cancellation and free speech and stuff like that, which is obviously important. But what drives it, and what drives it are the powers to be, the real powers to be, the monopoly powers. We're seeing television producers that want to form together to create even a more monopoly and control 80% of what we see on TV. That's certainly problematic, right? Because the monopoly laws say that I think it's no more than 39%. So they want to have this merger. They want the merger to go through. So they create this situation. If they're using the executive branch of the government to as a means to an end, I think we need to highlight that, and people need to understand that.
Yeah, that fits in nicely with the messaging that we've seen from Bernie Sanders and AOC on their Fighting Oligarchy tour. And I saw a recent survey that said something like only 12% of Democrats had heard of Abundance, the Ezra Klein, Derek Thompson book, which was all the rage, but over 40%, I think it was 44, 45%, had heard of Fighting Oligarchy. And this idea of like the little guy can't get ahead and the deck is stacked against him while these monopolies are created and the rich continue to get richer is something that is pervasive and frankly wins any race. I mean, Donald Trump campaigned on it the same way that someone like you would campaign on it. So has that been core to your message?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost in the message is campaign finance reform, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as it takes $300 million, which was raised and spent in Montana, $300 million and $100 million for each candidate in Texas, Florida, and Ohio, like we're just going to keep getting more of the same. I mean, you want to talk about the system being rigged? Yeah, it's totally rigged, but it's rigged towards the corporations, the monopolies, and the 1% that can afford to bankroll a campaign. And so, I always say Robin Williams, the late comedian, said it best that our elected officials should be wearing NASCAR jackets with patches of their sponsors so we know how they're going to vote. It is so true. But I don't take corporate money. I don't want to be involved in any of that. I want to represent the people of Nebraska the way the framers of the Constitution and the way it was supposed to be, a government by and for the people. And I'm frustrated, and everybody should be frustrated too. And that's the message that I'm trying to put out into Nebraska, and hopefully people will understand and kind of see the light and vote differently in 2026.
Well, they did understand in 2024, you got within 6 points of Deb Fischer, which, I'm not trying to be a participation trophy Democrat, but in Nebraska, that's pretty good. And how is your race shaping up against Pete Ricketts?
Yeah, it's going good. I mean, we're in the latest poll, and take polls for what they are, but we are up 1 point, which is I don't know that I've ever been up in the polls. And Ricketts has spent close to $2 million already, a year and a half out from the race, unprecedented in Nebraska. So this is no longer a flyover state. This is a battleground state. I intend to continue this momentum and go out there again, engage people, and talk about what I talk about is our paychecks. I mean, it's so simple, right? Because that's the way I live my life. I get a paycheck once a week. I know how much comes in. I know how much goes out. I work for an HVAC company, and life is getting harder. My paycheck is doing this while everything else is doing that. And going out and talking to people, they're all feeling the same pain, whether you're talking about healthcare, tariffs, or childcare, housing costs. I mean, everything, it's all on the rise. And I mean, I'm afraid, my kids are afraid, but we got to do something about it. This isn't the first time we've been here in this country. Sorry, I don't want to hog, but
no, I invited you. I'd love you to hog.
All right. This isn't the first time we've been here in this situation. I mean, you could look back into the turn of the century in the 1900s, and we had the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, the J.P. Morgans, the Mellons controlling 90% of the wealth in the country. We should take note from history, especially before it gets deleted, and what they did. What did the people do to course correct it, right? They started forming unions, striking their employers, because especially in factory settings and hazardous settings like I work in, you want to go home in the same shape and have all your fingers the way you showed up to work. It's pretty much that simple. They formed unions, they struck their employers, they held rallies, and then they started to elect officials like Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt, who championed these antitrust and anti-monopoly laws that we're talking about to create an even playing field. We're seeing these monopolies play out in Nebraska, especially in ag. Nebraska is a huge ag state. Most of our economy revolves around ag. And we're seeing monopolies in seed with Syngenta, Chinese-owned company. We're seeing it in our meat cutting and processing facilities. Our state's carved up into 4 big meat packers. We're seeing it with our chemicals. We're seeing it with everything, and they're controlling the prices. Now we're going to see it even more with rail, consolidation of rail. And, this consolidation favors the big guy. This isn't left versus right anymore. This is big versus little. I want to represent the little guy. Pete Ricketts is the big guy. And that's the message that, again, I'm taking to people, and hopefully it's going to start to sink in, I don't know, 4% better than it did in 2024.
Well, it seems like that message is being taken to the Republican-held town halls when they do hold them. And lately we've seen a lot more farmers in particular speaking out about the impact of the tariffs and specifically the relationship that the U.S. has with China right now. Can you talk a bit about big ag more specifically than you just did and the stress that people that work in those industries are under?
I mean, you only need to look. Farmer suicide is increasing at an alarming rate, right? Like, we are starting to see a massive consolidation with private equity on these farms. Small family farmers and ranchers, they're all on the chopping block. And they can't afford to fix their John Deere tractors, not having right to repair laws that have some teeth. They can shut their tractors down in the middle of the harvest, and they have to call out a John Deere rep to come get them started. Or worse, you have to take your tractor to a John Deere facility to get it repaired. It's cutting into their bottom line. One of the 3 pillars of sustainable farming is profit, right? We have to keep our farmers profitable. 2% of less than 2% now, I think, of our population feed the rest of us. And now we're seeing, with tariffs, they don't have anybody to sell their product to. And, in the seed world, they're selling their excess seed, that has already been genetically modified to Brazil. The same people that were buying our corn, and now they're going to be able to grow it. This is an emergency. This is absolutely an emergency, and I want to relate it to my own life and my own business, which is the HVAC world. Every quarter we get a email from our suppliers and on how much they're charging us for the things that we buy at our cost. I'm talking about domestic water heater this week is $200 more than it was 2 weeks ago due to tariffs. And so the company that I work for, Grunwald Mechanical, they can't eat that. If they do, they go out of business, right? So it gets passed on to the consumer. So to say that tariffs aren't a tax on the people is a grave mistake, because it absolutely is. And then I heard that they're going to bail out the farmers with the tariffs, subsidies or profits, whatever you want to call them. What? Like, this isn't making any sense. Come on, we gotta think here. This is craziness, and people are going to suffer. I mean, we could keep going on about rural hospitals and everything else with this big, beautiful bill and the defunding of it. Like, this is all to make the rich get richer. That's it. All this is about. And people like the Ricketts family, they're going to be the ones who benefit from this. And my family, we're going to struggle even more. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why we got to get this message out to as many people as possible. And hopefully they can decipher for themselves and cut through all the noise, which is this insane amount of algorithm that we all live in. But hopefully they can cut through that and see the truth in all this.
How have you been received by the Democratic establishment? I know you running as an independent, but, former labor leader, left-leaning, and certainly, going after a Republican seat. So are you getting support from DC types, or are you really out there on your own?
Well, I'm out there talking to everybody. I'm trying to get Republican, Libertarian. We have a party here in Nebraska, legalize marijuana now, as well as the Democrats. This is going to take
everybody.
It's going to take everybody. So I'm talking to everybody. Yeah, I'm talking to the Democrats, but I'm talking to the Republicans. I'm, the ones that want to listen, that understand that, maybe we need a different direction. and a different voice, an independent voice that's going to listen to the people and the problems and not be a part of the problem, which is I don't take corporate money. I'm not going to be a part of that corporate machine. I work for a corporation. I worked for Kellogg's for 20 years. I don't want to work for them anymore. I want to work for the people the way this whole thing was set out to be.
Yeah. I mostly wanted to make sure that Chuck Schumer would give you money when you need money because Republicans are going to pump a lot of money into it.
Well, they are. And that's what I tell people. They're like, oh, where's all your money come from? Yes, of course.
People.
It comes from people. I raised $14 million in 2024. My average donation was $37. So it is powered by the people. And I love that. I open envelopes all day long. My wife and I actually at the end of the day, we go and we pick them up and we sit there and we open them. We read the letters of encouragement from people all around the country, a lot of them from Nebraska, saying that we're behind you. All I can afford is $15. And but that $15 goes a long way when you're talking about thousands of people, right? Because this is hard. It's hard on the family. Pete Ricketts has already spent $2 million in the state, and a lot of that is negative. It doesn't bother me. I'm a mechanic. I've worked in a mechanic shop my whole life, so I can take it as much as I can give it. But it's hard on the kids, and But that's what keeps us all going are those letters and giving people hope for a different future than what we're seeing now.
Absolutely. We do have, you already mentioned the big, beautiful bill, which has terrible effects on the average working person. Your cost of living will go up about $2,400. But you mentioned something that I think is really under-discussed, which is the closures of rural hospitals. You're already seeing that in Nebraska?
Yeah. We were out in Curtis. We did a town hall out there. Curtis is just outside of a place called McCook, Nebraska, and those folks are worried. Now, this isn't like a major hospital. This is a satellite hospital, but nonetheless, all of those people rely on that hospital. And, they announced the closure already. And then about a month later, they announced the fact that they're going to open up a detention center that they're nicknaming the Cornhusker Clink. So we're closing hospitals and we're opening immigration detention centers. I don't know. That doesn't add up in my head as progress for a country that is as abundant as the United States of America and has a rich history of uplifting its people. We seem to be going the wrong way or the wrong direction in that one. But, they're taking, depending on the news article you read, and $300 billion, and correct me if I'm wrong, from Medicaid, and they're adding $50 billion for rural hospitals. I got kicked out of algebra class and math class a few times for not being able to keep my mouth shut and spending time in the hallway. So I'm not a huge mathematician. I can read a tape measure real good, but $300 billion and $50 billion, that's a stark contrast. And so what that means for Nebraska is that's $100 million per year for 5 years to prop up rural hospitals. Well, I was talking to a woman out in Columbus, Nebraska, who's a hospital administration at one of my events there. She said her annual operating budget for that hospital in Columbus, Nebraska is $22 million. That's one hospital. And that's one hospital in one state. Think about it, a state like Texas gets the same amount of money. So what's going to happen? Hospitals are closing. They're going to close, and people are going to die. If you have an emergency appendectomy like my daughter just had recently, and you're 90 miles away, that's life and death right there. So I don't know how people aren't more enraged than they are currently. And, I think there's a government shutdown looming because of it. Are
you supportive of that?
Yeah,
You think the Democrats should shut it down?
Shut it down.
I shouldn't say that. They should let the Republicans shut it down because we're not in control.
But that's part of the fight, right? That's part of how serious this situation is. Because again, people are going to die, and these are our parents and our grandparents and our loved ones that are going to suffer. So that's the way I look at it. I'm not looking at this left versus right. I'm looking at this as a human being on a planet that we share with other human beings. It's a quality of life issue. But who's benefiting? Again, are the 1%. And they're going to run away with the money as we suffer. That's disgusting.
Yeah, that's pretty depressing. I wanted to ask you, and we do this at the end of every interview, what's one thing that makes you rage and one thing you think we should all calm down about?
Oh, that is a good question.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose the one thing that makes me rage is people not going when the arrow light turns green and they're on their phone.
People have given answers like that. You don't.
Oh, really?
If that's really what's pissing you out, we've talked about escalators, we've talked about traffic, we've talked about FaceTime. But
I mean, that's on a small daily level, right? Personal level. But no, what I see in politics, which makes me so angry, is the fact that everybody's making this left versus right. This isn't left versus right. This is big versus little. And it's really trying to cut through the noise and the propaganda. You know, if you're making less than $100,000 a year and you're struggling to get by, if you're 25 years old and the average first-time home buyer in this country is 38 years old and you're still voting for the people that want to funnel the money to the top, that's so frustrating. I don't know if it's rage, but it's definitely a massive frustration for me.
What do you think we should all calm down about?
I think we should all calm down about what's on these phones, right? Because I was on it the other day. I was doom scrolling, like sometimes I get caught up in, like everybody probably does. And it was just right after the Charlie Kirk assassination, and people are raising black flags. I had to Google, what does a black flag mean? And they're like, oh, we're at war, take no prisoners. And I'm like, what? And everybody's like on there saying, we're at war, we're at war. And the algorithm gave me more of what I was watching, right? Instead of kittens playing the piano. And I was like, oh my gosh, are we at war? And then I shut it off. I went and mowed my yard. I opened up a beer and I sat back and was appreciating my yard that I just mowed. And then I looked down the street and there's my neighbor girls riding their bikes and scooters. And I looked up and my other neighbor's washing my car. I'm like, we're not at war. You know, we gotta calm down on the internet because it's not real life. Open up your door. We just got to look outside and talk to our neighbors to find out that we have a lot more in common than we do that divides us if we just talk to each other.
Governor Cox tried to get people to hear that message too in the wake of Charlie's assassination. You know, go out and touch some grass. It feels like millions of years ago, and it was only a couple of weeks. But it's a really important message for us to all hear. Dan, thank you for your time. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
And good luck.
Appreciate you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.